This is a station identification moment. You're listening to CPR Worldwide Media, a division of CPR Media Network, coming to you live right across the planet. Check out our website at www.cprworldwidemedia.com and our Facebook page at facebook.com/CPR Worldwide Media. This is CPR Media Network, coming to you live from the USA.
Well, looky here, a new listener. Hey, this ain't your little sister's radio station.
Why do cities shine so bright? It's the glow of opportunities, of ideas bouncing off one another, of countless people, every one of us, striving to succeed. Right now, in cities everywhere, ideas are being born. New thinking that will put us in awe of what people are capable of. That's what lights cities up. And helping people and their ideas to burn even brighter, so that communities, businesses, and you and I can grow. What if a bank made that its job? For more than 200 years, Citi's job has been to help empower people and business. Now, around the world, it's wherever people gather, wherever ideas come alive. It's wherever you are. The world's city.
The design of the Ford Escape is clearly intended to grab your eye. Oh, and your foot. Huh, ain't that a kick? The Ford Escape with the foot-activated liftgate. Go open up something interesting. Go further.
However dark the night, however dim our hopes, the light is always there within you.
His family gave him hope.
You fight harder than those other guys, and you win.
His spirit gave him strength.
We're gonna die out here. We're not dying!
And in his darkest hour,
who is the Olympic athlete?
his faith would not be broken.
Hello, Mother and Father. This will be the first time in 2 years that you'll have heard my voice. I wish you all a Merry Christmas. Your loving son, Louis.
On Christmas Day, experience the unbelievable true story of one man's journey home.
You can take it. You can make it. Just gotta believe you can.
If I can take it, I can make it.
Unbroken, rated PG-13, Christmas Day. The moment you connect, you're no longer in control.
What does this guy want? No claim, no statement.
We're facing a nuclear meltdown. This is only the beginning.
Black Hat, rated R.
Read something recently worth thinking about. It's the soldier, not the campus organizer, who's given us freedom to demonstrate. It's the soldier, not the reporter, who's given us freedom of the press. It's the soldier, not the poet, who's given us freedom of speech. It's the soldier who serves under the flag, who defends the protesters' right to burn the flag. Isn't it time now to demonstrate that we support our troops? Were it not for the brave, there'd be no land of the free.
Fred Thompson's message was brought to you by citizensunited.org.
Welcome to the State Legislators Roundtable. Your host will be Charles Kacprowicz, Executive Director of Citizen Initiatives and Countermand Amendment. Our special legislator guests will be discussing important issues in their states that relate to federal encroachment on states' rights. The nonpartisan Article 5 single-issue countermand amendment can remedy many states' issues peacefully without the consent of Congress, the courts, or the executive branch. We will reclaim our constitutional republic soon. The nonpartisan countermand amendment is the missing piece of the Article 5 puzzle. Our nation is coming apart at the seams, so we are countermanding.
Good evening, folks. Welcome to the State Legislators Roundtable. This is Charles Kacprowicz, Executive Director for Citizen Initiatives and the Countermand Amendment. These roundtable discussions with state legislators, community leaders, and sometimes just open-ended discussions like we're going to have tonight surround, or I should say, they center around critical issues in the states as they relate to federal encroachment on states' rights, and how the nonpartisan Countermand Amendment can remedy many of them safely and quickly. This is not a gotcha forum, so we're not here to put people in a corner. Subjects can include taxation, criminal law, energy, healthcare, social issues, federal land grabs, court decisions, education, executive orders, unfunded liabilities, the EPA, BLM, IRS, and much more. You will learn how to protect your enumerated rights in the Constitution and how the states and their citizens can identify, define, and protect their unenumerated rights in the 9th and 10th Amendments peacefully and permanently. In addition, because the Countermand Amendment that we will be talking more about tonight is so powerful and it is for the state legislatures to use, we don't change the Constitution. The Constitution remains exactly the way it is right now. It just is protected through state legislatures. Our roundtable members tonight include Sandy Toth, our executive coordinator and Georgia State Director, Mike Coons, our national director and Alaska State Director, and Kelli Gordon, our national coordinator, Texas State Director, and producer. We have at least 15 states that have sponsored us, and I've recently visited with North Dakota and South Dakota. I'll try to talk a little bit more about that in a few minutes. But we've had a good trip. I'm on a 36 state capital tour. We're hoping to get to all 36 over 3 months. And I believe by the time we get done, there will be many eyes open, and there will be a lot of interest in what we are doing. You can also tell your friends to tune into this program tonight. We're going to be discussing snake oil. Is, in fact, Convention of States, and the others for that matter, promoting snake oil? And I'm going to have quite a bit to say about that. Now, tell them to go to cprworldwidemedia.com. That's cprworldwidemedia.com. And you will be opening up some doors for them on issues and topics that they have not heard before. If you would like to learn more about the work we are doing, go to countermands.us. That's countermands.us. And you can float around that website. There's a lot of material there. There is a button at the top of the page. It's a Countermand Amendment. Click that, and you'll be able to look at the documentation that's associated with it. Now, I have finished a very important meeting up in North Dakota. I was asked to give testimony to an Article 5 government committee, the purpose for which is to decide if the Countermand Amendment and the delegate resolution should go to the floor. I am pleased to tell you that the committee voted on both favorably, and our amendment and our delegate resolution is actually en route to the floor in the House. The Senate will be looking at it shortly, and there's reasons to believe that it too will approve it. We have received a tremendous amount of respect. I had 4 different committee meetings in North Dakota, and the legislators who not only invited me, also who participated in these events, including a reception on Wednesday night. It was, I guess there might have been about 70 people there, legislators from North Dakota. It has been an excellent visit in North Dakota. Really found myself enjoying these people and their sincerity and their desire to find answers to stop federal encroachment on their states' rights and their citizens. And then we went to South Dakota. South Dakota is an even more exciting state, and I can't mention names, and I can't even mention the position, only because I don't want to draw attention to these individuals. But the fact is, South Dakota is very interested in getting our amendment and delegate resolution through. As a matter of fact, one of the key senators said to me, he said, "This is what I'm looking for. You finally have provided me with what I need as a legislator." And so the Countermand Amendment is being looked at with great respect. Now, I said that to tell you that by the time we get done with this 36th state capital tour, I do believe we will have a whole different perspective in the legislatures as to just what the Countermand Amendment is all about. But tonight, we're going to talk about snake oil. How many out there know what snake oil is? Do you remember the cowboy movies and the medicine man would come riding in his covered wagon and have signs on it and talks about liniments for this and cures for this, and usually it was some kind of colored water of some kind. But the fact is that snake oil is what those who are presenting it really isn't. So in fact, as that medicine man was presenting his arguments why they should buy his liniment and or his whiskey or whatever it is that he was selling, it didn't do anything. It actually provided the people who used it with no benefit. That's snake oil. And he got paid for it. Now, I am very, very, very concerned about what is happening with a distorted explanation of Article 5 in the U.S. Constitution. I am sick and tired of people who claim to be so smart and have so many titles to their name. One claims to be the leading conservative scholar on constitutional law. Another one is advocating, he has practiced law before the Supreme Court and brags on the fact that it dealt with Article 5. And others have made similar statements. And of course, then there are other organizations that have been addressing the Article 5 questions. And I am telling you straight out, folks, they are deceiving us. Now, they may not be intentionally deceiving us. They may not really believe that what they are saying is wrong. They may think it's right. But it is wrong because it's cheating the state legislatures of their sovereign authority and their deliberative status, and it is creating, if they win, it'll create a mess, a real mess for future state legislators. And we have to put a stop to it. And we can. We know how. Now let's go back and just review a few things. The question that I want to ask the audience tonight is, what is sovereignty? Do you know what sovereignty is? It is not something where you have to ask someone for permission to do something. Now, you've heard my example in times past, whereby if I have an executive coming into my office and I say to him, I want you to take on a project, and I explain it, and he looks at me and he says, I'm not going to do this. I'll ask him why. And he's going to say, well, this is not something I want to do. Doesn't matter his reason, I fire him on the spot. He's my employee. I am sovereign over him in that regard. In regarding his connection to me as an employee, I am a sovereign being. He doesn't have to give me permission to fire him. In this egalitarian culture that we live in, sovereignty has been lost. The word authority has been lost. Now, sovereignty in state legislatures means they are the final arbiters in all constitutional matters. They don't need Congress's permission for anything. They don't need the Supreme Court's permission for anything. They surely don't need the President's executive orders for anything, nor the regulatory agencies. When it comes to Article 5, state legislatures are sovereign. They define everything that is part of the Article 5 process. And we're going to be talking even more about that in a quick moment. Now, a little bit of history. Before the Constitutional Convention in 1787, the states were independent nation states. They, in fact, looked at themselves as separate countries. They found problems with working with each other. They had difficulties with fishing rights and water rights and tariffs and commerce rules and laws, and they had all kinds of issues between themselves they couldn't solve. Part of the problem was that in order to amend the Articles of Confederation, it required unanimous consent. So the first thing was to get rid of the idea that one state could hold the other 12 hostage just by saying no. On the other hand, they had other problems. They had problems dealing with how to fight the Revolutionary War, which we almost lost because of this independent nature that they had with one another as nation states. Two, they had problems with trying to win the peace after the war, and for the same reasons. Then they had problems trying to figure out how they might be able to amend the Articles of Confederation so that they could live together in more harmony. And that didn't work. And in this Annapolis Convention, which was for the purpose of amending the Articles, realizing that there was literally no hope to get the Articles amended sufficiently to meet the exigencies of the federal government, which was under the Confederation Congress at that time, Kelly, can you tell me the word I'm looking for? The point is, they wanted the federal government to function properly.
Exigency.
My tongue is tied here.
Exigency.
So in this Annapolis Convention, they started to debate how they can amend the Articles. And within a very short time, they realized that they were not getting agreement on anything. Now here you have 13 sovereign states. One didn't want any part of going to the Constitutional Convention, called Rhode Island. They did not want to surrender their sovereignty to the collective will of the others. They didn't want anything to do with a new constitution that had no rights for the civil liberties of its citizens. Actually, Rhode Island is looked down upon in many quarters, but in many ways, Rhode Island was a hero. They, in fact, knew that a constitution without amendments that would be for the purpose of protecting individual rights, that it would be worthless. And so they didn't want to go. They eventually ratified the Constitution 3 years later, but that was after the Bill of Rights had been sent out by the Confederation Congress for the purpose of soothing the feathers of the states that were concerned about individual liberties. That's why we have the Bill of Rights today. There are 10 of them at that time, and eventually an 11th one came 200 years later. Now, sovereignty is the big problem. So here you have these nation states under the Articles of Confederation. They don't want to surrender their sovereignty. They don't want to let anyone else tell them who they are. And so they finally come begrudgingly to the consent of having a constitutional convention for the purpose of modifying the Articles in a very dramatic way, even in an open way, to where it would even turn out to be a different document. And that's what happened. Now, the state legislature said, we'll do it. They knew they had to do something. They knew the nation was about to be lost. And they had to find a way to make agreements between themselves and still retain their sovereignty. And so the Constitutional Convention got started. Before they had their first deliberations, before even the first word was spoken as to what matters need to be addressed, they had a problem of sovereignty. Do you know what that was? Yes, voting. The fact is that they had to decide how the votes would be taken at the convention. You see, the bigger states, the more populated states, they said we want it by population. So every delegate who came from those larger states would have one vote, and they would represent more people, and so there would be more delegates from the larger states. And then the smaller states say, wait a minute, we're independent nations. We don't want things to be going based on population. We want to have one vote for our state, and you have one vote for your state. Well, that was to be debated. That was a problem. And it was because of sovereignty that was not yet settled. And so, Mr. George Wythe, and again, I'm repeating history here because I've shared this a number of times. Mr. George Wythe, a great teacher and lawyer and professor, and one of the delegates from Virginia, he was assigned a committee and had to work out agreements between the states at the convention whereby they would be able to vote in a way that would be acceptable to everybody. Well, the smallest states won. And George Wythe recommended that there would be one vote per state. Now, that had to happen before they could even start talking about the Constitution. And guess what, folks? Any Article 5 convention, you've got the same problem to solve. And here's the point that I want to bring to your attention before we ever even get into the Constitutional Convention and the Constitution itself. Can you imagine, under an Article 5 convention with unbound delegates, going to a convention, let's say it's the Convention of States convention, they have 3 topics, subjects, reigning in government, fiscal policies, and term limits. And they have under those multiple sub-subjects, under the one reigning in government, who's going to decide what that means? Does that mean you're going to reign in the federal government? Which part of the federal government? Are you going to reign in the courts? Are you going to reign in the EPA? Are you going to reign in the BLM? What does that mean? Well, under each sub-subject, every subject, there may be 12 or more sub-subjects, and then under that you could have 12 or more under each sub-subject. So the point is, you have all of these question marks when you send delegates to a convention to decide what the subjects are. Now, the flaw that exists is very, very simple to understand. The fact is that COS and all of the others, except for one, the Compact for America, understands the necessity for deliberation to be by the legislatures, but they have added a couple things that I do have a problem with, one of which is they've added the idea that they have to have a compact between the states that requires congressional approval, and then they also need to have it signed by the governor of the state, and they're looking for 38 states to have that compact so that their balanced budget amendment, as written, would be acceptable to all the states. And so the process is, I believe, flawed, but they understand the necessity for a pre-approved document. Now, let's go back to Article 5 again. So now you have the COS convention. You've got Congress summoning as many as 530-some delegates. Congress doesn't appoint them. Congress summons them. And is there someone trying to get in here on this call? Okay. The fact is that Congress doesn't appoint them. Congress summons them. Congress is the facilitator. Congress is not the ultimate authority. The state legislatures are. We've got to understand that. There's been so much bad information out there. Sovereignty trumps Congress. Sovereignty in legislatures trumps the Supreme Court and the executive. When the states make a decision that they want to amend the Constitution in such and such a way, the other branch, all the 3 branches of government are obliged and obligated to obey the principles and provisions in that amendment. The states decide these things, not Congress. Can you imagine if the states had to go to Congress under Article 5 and say, look, Congress, we want to amend the Constitution to rein in government so that you're not so wild in your spending and other aspects of what you're doing that are hurting the states. And now, what we need to do is get your permission to do it. That's absurd. Congress is going to say, what do you mean? Why would we want you to rein in our authority and our activity? We're not going to give you that permission. And then what do the states do? They do nothing with that kind of thinking. You see, Article 5 would be meaningless to them. It would be useless. There'd be no sovereignty in it. Congress would have the sovereignty. Did you know that the federal government does not have sovereignty, as I'm defining it tonight? The federal government can have its conduct modified by the legislatures who are sovereign, not the federal government. Did you know that the Supreme Court is not really the sovereign entity, even with its supremacy clause? The fact remains the Supreme Court cannot make a decision unless it first considers what's in the Constitution. I know that they often make flawed decisions and cause more problems than they're worth sometimes, including with the slaughter of the unborn, 50 million babies dead today because of that stupid decision back in 1973. But here's the point. The state legislatures alone are sovereign under Article 5. Now,
well, Charles, wouldn't it be like the parent going to the child and asking permission to ask the child to please modify your wait, am I saying this right? The parent asking the child for permission, I guess, would be the short of it. It's the other way around. The child asks the parent.
Yes. You're right.
And as far as snake oil, making promises that you can't keep, promising that you're going to fix something that isn't going to work. And Charles, I came across an interesting quote from a gentleman. Let's see, what was his name? I can't remember what his name is, but it was. Wish I could find it. Okay, here it is. The gentleman's name is Alvin Toffler. I'm not familiar with who he is, but the quote that he says, if I can get back to it, it said, "The illiterate of the 21st century will not be those who cannot read and write, but those who cannot learn, unlearn, and relearn." And I think that might be a little bit of some of the problems that we're up against here, because people can't seem to learn and then unlearn. They can't seem to take in new information and relearn and process that new information, and maybe even change their mind because they have new, better information to make new, better choices.
Yeah, well, and we can add to that a word that Sandy often uses, just reasonable.
And common sense.
Things out.
Common sense.
Yeah,
but Charles, we are coming up to a break. I want to invite everyone to please visit our website at www.countermand.us. Charles has his new book out. It's Article 5. It's Countermand, the missing piece to the Article 5 puzzle. If you want to learn more about what we're discussing and the strategy and the mechanics of the Article 5 and the correct, safe way to do it, please visit our website and pick up a copy of that book. You can also send a copy of that book to your legislator. And with that, I'm going to go ahead. We're going to go take a quick station break, and then we will be right back with some more great information for you. Stay tuned.
This is CPR Media Network, coming to you live from the USA.
Over the next 40 years, the United States population is going to grow by over 90 million people, and almost all that growth is going to be in cities. What's the healthiest and best way for them to grow so that they really become cauldrons of prosperity and cities of opportunity? What we have found is that if that family is moved into safe, green, affordable housing, places that have access to great school systems, access to jobs, and multiple transportation modes, then the neighborhood begins to thrive and really, really take off. The oxygen of community redevelopment is financing. And all this rebuilding that happened could not have happened without organizations like Citi.
One of the things that we really try to do is to collaborate with people like Jonathan Rose, who are really like-minded and really can also provide innovative solutions to social issues.
And Citi has formed a partnership with our company so that we can take all the lessons from the revitalization of urban America to other cities. So we're now working in Chicago and in Washington, D.C., in Newark.
It's branching off of Jonathan's expertise and the fact that he has done so many wonderful affordable housing projects, new development and rehabilitation work. And so we were really seeing that there was a need for his skill in areas even outside of New York.
It's amazing how important safe, affordable housing is to the future of our society.
You meet new people, they want to know what you do. And when you tell them your job is to invest in things like low-income housing and schools and healthcare, they're shocked and they're so surprised that a job like this exists in finance. They always say that they had no idea, and then they want to know how they can get a job like that.
The most amazing thing about the Ford Fusion isn't the way it looks. The most amazing thing is the way it sees. With blind spot technology, a lane keeping system, and a standard rear view camera, the Fusion is ready for whatever comes your way. Go prepared. Go further.
However dark the night, however dim our hopes, the light is always there within you. His family gave him hope.
You fight harder than those other guys, and you win.
His spirit gave him strength.
We're gonna die out here. We're not dying!
And in his darkest hour,
Who is the Olympic athlete?
his faith would not be broken.
Hello, Mother and Father. This will be the first time in 2 years that you'll have heard my voice. I wish you all a Merry Christmas. Your loving son, Louis.
On Christmas Day, experience the unbelievable true story of one man's journey home.
You can take it. You can make it. Just gotta believe you can.
If I can take it, I can make it.
Unbroken, rated PG-13, Christmas Day. The moment you connect, you're no longer in control.
What does this guy want?
No claim, no statement.
We're facing a nuclear meltdown. This is only the beginning.
Black Hat, rated R.
Read something recently worth thinking about. It's the soldier, not the campus organizer, who's given us freedom to demonstrate. It's the soldier, not the reporter, who's given us freedom of the press. It's the soldier, not the poet, who's given us freedom of speech. It's the soldier who serves under the flag, who defends the protesters' right to burn the flag. Isn't it time now to demonstrate that we support our troops? Were it not for the brave, there'd be no land of the free.
Fred Thompson's message was brought to you by citizensunited.org.
To the State Legislators Roundtable. And again, this is Charles Kacprowicz, Executive Director for Citizen Initiatives and the Countermand Amendment. Tonight we are discussing some serious questions dealing with snake oil. And we're going to be getting back into that in a quick moment. But I would like to remind the audience to go to countermands with an S, .us. That's countermands.us. And look at the website, learn what we're doing, order a copy of my new book called Countermand Amendment, The Missing Piece in the Article 5 Puzzle. And you can also make donations by clicking one of the donation buttons. But if you have an interest in helping us, let us know by clicking the Join Us button. And I'm going to be talking more about just how people can help us in a moment. But right now I want to get back to this question of snake oil. Now, the reason why COS, Convention of States, and the Balanced Budget Amendment Task Force and the term limit people and other groups that have tried to advance amendments to the Constitution, the reason why they send delegates or have the idea of sending delegates to a convention unbound is because they think that those delegates are the same as the founders. That's their assumption. Now, I don't know how many of us have been in a class on logic, but one of the first things you learn is if you start out with the wrong assumption, you will always end up with a wrong answer. Even if you got there to the right location or the right answer, you wouldn't understand how you got there. The point is that they start out with the assumption that the delegates are the sovereign entities, that they decide the directions of this nation. Well, let's go back for a moment to the Constitutional Convention. The delegates at the Constitutional Convention, who were the founders, were not the sovereign entities. They did not go to the convention with the idea that they were going to make a government that determined their will only. They went as ambassadors for their nation states legislatures. They went representing their states with the patriotic vision of trying to save a nation and trying to find a way to create a federal system that will honor nation-state status in the colonies. Now, when we look at the delegates at the Constitutional Convention, we need to remember this. They were answerable to the nation-states. They were answerable to their legislatures. They were also answerable to the Confederation Congress. The Congress at that time had some different parameters than our Congress today with regard to convening conventions. But at the same time, when the delegates, the founders finally finished their work, and we'll talk about that in a little bit here, when they finally finished their work, it was not yet a new government. There was not really a new constitution yet. It had to be ratified by the nation states legislatures. They were the sovereign entities, not the founders, not the Confederation Congress, but the legislatures in the states. Folks, it's pretty simple when you understand that. Yes.
Charles, and I know the audience is hearing you on this, but it's the same thing as it is today. What happened then, everything goes from Congress to the states, flows through the states, and back to the states always. Because it starts off with the application to Congress, then the convention with the final, then it goes back to Congress, then Congress sends it back to the states, and the states are the ones that ratify, not the Congress. The Congress is just a facilitator. So back at you.
Yeah, excellent. And you're absolutely correct. From the application all the way through to ratification, it's the state legislatures that are the ones in control, and they are the ones who have sovereign authority. Now, when we look at the Constitutional Convention, and we look at the dilemmas that have existed from the transition from the Annapolis Convention to this new Constitutional Convention, and then we look at the work of George Wythe and trying to even settle the issue of one vote per state, you can see how difficult it was for them to retain their nation-state sovereignty. It wasn't easy. And yet they knew they had to do something. Their solution was in Article 5, and we'll discuss that in a quick moment. But the fact is that when the delegates proposed to the states, after they wrote the Constitution, that asking the legislatures to ratify it, what did they do? They didn't order the legislatures to ratify it. They didn't demand it. What they did was they started a publication, Publius. Remember the Federalist Papers? And they said these Federalist Papers are important because they will help the legislatures and the people to understand how important this is and how the legislatures need to ratify it. You see, they were asking. They weren't dictating. They weren't telling the states. They were asking the states. They did a great job at the Constitutional Convention. They were absolutely genius when it comes to Article 5. I think the most important part of this Constitution is Article 5. But at the same time, the founders never looked at themselves as controlling the states. They looked at themselves as representing the states and doing their darndest to figure out a way so the states can survive with one another. Now, how did they solve this problem? Well, under Article 5, which they didn't even have in place yet when George Wythe was working on the committee for one vote per state, not by population. The fact is, and they also had to solve the problem of a simple majority in the voting for each vote from the states. A simple majority would take that ballot. But the fact is that when the deliberation started, they were first concerned about the structure of the federal government, but right in the very beginning, in Article 5, they said we have to find a way to keep our legislative sovereignty and at the same time allow future generations of legislators to modify the conduct of the federal government when the government overreaches. You see, again, I'm repeating something that many may have heard me say before, and I credit Skousen for this kind of thinking, because in his book, The Making of America, he talks about how the founders looked at the world and how they looked at government. You see, they didn't see government as a left or right situation. They didn't look at government as a Democratic or Republican party type affiliation. No. They were far smarter than we are today. They saw government as being either too big or too small. That was a simple little approach. And if it was too big, they knew that would turn into a tyranny, a monarchy, some king. If it was too small, they knew that would turn out to be anarchy, and you'd have no government. And so what did they do? They created a government that had a middle. And who was the middle? First, it was divided government, so that you have three branches actually checking each other. But at the same time, in the middle were the people. And the people, through their legislatures, were literally saying to the federal government, you can only go so far. Now, I want to qualify something here. The fact is that there is a difference between the voting rights of people who are voting in federal elections and the voting rights of people who are voting in state elections. When you and I vote for the governor of our state, it's by a majority of the voters that wins that ballot for that man or that woman. But the fact is, when you're voting for the President of the United States, you are really voting for electors. Even from the very beginning, the Constitution wanted to put a buffer in between the government and the people to make sure that the people in a majority situation wouldn't rule the minority. And so that's why they also were interested in creating a republic with each state having one vote and not depending on the population of the state. Now let's go back for a moment to the Convention of States argument. I am personally getting more and more upset with the Convention of States people for not understanding these simple truths. I know they're probably looking at me like I'm some kind of a jerk, some kind of an arrogant fool that doesn't understand anything. And that's okay. But I know this, every time I get into a debate with them, whether it be their director, their CEO, or Michael Farris, I seem to come out on the other side better than he does. Now, yeah, they do politicking and they have some money and they have some influence, but that's not what's winning the battle. We're winning the battle because of sovereignty in state legislatures. Now, let's take a look at their argument. Here they have these three major topics. As I explained earlier, they will filter down into scores and scores and scores of subtopics. They don't have any bound delegates. They have no contract between the delegates and their legislatures other than to define in a general way a topic, like reigning in government. And by the way, even that they have a problem because they have encouraged some of the legislatures to attach, or at least they consented when they were questioned about it, to attach some kind of penalty against the delegates if they violate the mandate to confine their deliberations to reigning in government. Now, I'm going to tell you, there's no way that they can do that. I wouldn't want to go to their convention. I'd wind up getting arrested and put in prison because it's so vague. The safeguards that they think are safeguards are not safeguards at all, and all they do is create questions that the delegates will not be able to answer. So here's the point. Here you have 530 some delegates under the COS proposal that could be summoned to the convention, and let's assume that the states appoint 530, but now they all go to the convention, they're unbound, and they don't even know how to decide what voting rights they're going to have. They don't even know that it's a Republican form of government. Remember Article 4, Section 4? We're guaranteed a Republican form of government. What does that mean? It means that the nation-state status before the Constitutional Convention is preserved for the states in Article 4, Section 4. That's what it means. See, they didn't want to surrender their sovereignty. And so now you go to the COS convention. I doubt if it's going to be convened, by the way, but if it is, you go, and now you've got 500, let's assume 530 some delegates, and they're going to decide how the voting will count. Well, they're going to have the same problem that they had with George Wythe. They're going to have to decide if it's going to be by population or if it's going to be by one vote per state. Now, 55 delegates from California will go, and 3 from Wyoming. And they haven't even decided yet that it's a Republican form of government that will rule the convention. So now how in the world are they going to come up with anything that will satisfy the smaller states? There's no way that they can, because the bigger states have all of the delegates. But as long as it's a constitutional republic, the smaller states can survive. And the moment that the smaller states surrender that authority that they have under Article 5 and as a constitutional republic, then by surrendering it, they have lost their identity. They must hold on to it. Forget about these cries from the left that keep saying we need to have democratic voting. That's nonsense. The whole purpose of a Republican form of government is to protect states and individuals from the tyranny of the majority. That's the purpose of it. So a little state like New Hampshire can be protected equally to Texas or California. So here we have now these delegates that go to the convention, and they haven't even settled the first issue. How are we going to vote? Now, if you have 55 from California and 3 from Wyoming and similar numbers from other states, how do you think it's going to turn out? You see, the only way that you can prevent mayhem at this convention, not a constitutional convention, there is no option under Article 5 for a constitutional convention. That is, it's for proposing amendments. And folks, go to the website, countermand.us. Order my book. You'll get details about these things that you've never heard before. And you'll understand what it is that we're up against and why what we are doing with citizen initiatives and our people is so critical to properly using Article 5 so we can preserve this constitutional republic. So here these delegates now are at the COS convention. They're unbound. They haven't decided anything. And they have to decide how they're going to vote. Then they're going to have to decide if it will be by a majority, that is, simple majority at the ballot. Well, they have to figure out if it's going to be a republic. And the bigger states are going to say, no, we don't want that. George Soros is already saying he wants to do away with issues that deal with one vote per state. There have been people trying to do away with the Electoral College for that reason, you see, when electing the president. So we have a serious flaw in the thinking of COS and the thinking of Balanced Budget Task Force, the Amendment Task Force, and term limits and others, because they don't see the delegates properly. Under Article 5, what the founders did at the convention is they found a way to retain their sovereign authority and their ability to make changes to the Constitution in the future and the ability to modify the conduct of the federal government in the future when needed. And they found the way to do it in Article 5. And they said, instead of requiring a unanimous vote by all the states in order to have amendments to this Constitution, what we will do is we will agree that it will be 3/4 for ratification. So that meant that gridlock was not as likely. And things could happen then that couldn't happen if unanimous consent was required. So here we have the 3/4 of the state legislatures, not the state governor, not the special groups in the government of the states, the legislatures. 3/4 of the state legislatures agree on anything that is for the purpose of amending the Constitution, and the Constitution is now amended. Doesn't require unanimous consent. Now, I want you to know that the delegate issue, that is, the delegate issue as to who they are, is not properly understood by these great names that we have been bantering around for the last year. You realize that, of course, Convention of States, Mark Levin, LeMeckler, Nadelson, and a whole host of others, they're latecomers to Article 5. They kind of jumped in thinking that they were smart and that they had a way in which to use Article 5, which is what they are proposing. Now, I do recognize that they are patriots. They are trying to find solutions to this nation's troubles and to the state's troubles. However, their reasoning is flawed because it denies state legislature sovereignty, and it denies the ability of the states to rein in government in a specific way without the permission of the federal government and without the permission of the delegates going to the convention. Now, one more thing. Kelli, are we near the end of this half-hour segment?
We've still got about 7 minutes.
Okay. Folks, I am calling from and talking on this program from Cheyenne, Wyoming. I've had some trouble getting on the internet, so I'm doing it on the telephone. And so I cannot see a monitor here. I cannot tell if it's, what's happening at your end. So I'll have to ask our producer to interrupt once in a while so I know how far I have to go and when I have to shut up. When we look at this issue of the duty of delegates, we ask the question, are they the deliberative body? Now, they are deliberative in that when they go to a convention, even when they're bound, they have to discuss. But they don't discuss the amendment. That's already to be decided by the state legislatures. That amendment, the text, in our case, the Countermand Amendment, which the legislatures are responding to extremely well, the fact is that that amendment is being pre-approved by the legislatures. Now, we've had many legislators that had influence on the thinking that went into this amendment. Many on this call here tonight actually had input into the final wording on this amendment. And it didn't happen just because somebody had a brainstorm and just thought that they had the best way to do things. No, it was a deliberative thing. But when the state legislatures look at what we have proposed to them, they have to say yes or no. And when we give them the option to countermand and rescind any law or regulation or even judicial decision, even a treaty, even non-government agencies, they can, when it's a burden to the states and their citizens and their businesses, they can literally rescind that law when 60% of the states countermand it. And that's powerful. And then they can enforce they can press for the enforcement so that if the federal government doesn't prosecute intentional violators, Within 90 days, the states can. You've got to look at this amendment, folks. Read this book, countermands.us. It's not like anything you've read before. And you will get details here. It'll be a reference book for you in your library. You'll be able to give it to your kids and your grandkids, and you're going to be able to say, we have been part of history. I personally believe that the Countermand Amendment, as it presently stands, and I mentioned this, exactly what I'm going to tell you now, I mentioned it to one of the really important men in the legislatures, in the legislature, well, actually in both North Dakota and South Dakota. I firmly believe that we are working and advancing the most important historical initiative and document since the Constitution. I think everything else pales to it, because this way, with this amendment, we will restore our constitutional republic. That's how important it is. And you know, if during the Civil War they had an understanding of how they could use Article 5, probably the war wouldn't have been necessary. On the other hand, the best thing that came out of the Civil War is the preservation of Article 5. Regardless of what side you're on, Article 5 was preserved. And so we have it today to work on. Now, understand, under Article 5, it's for the purpose of proposing amendments. It's not for the purpose of delegates to decide what the issues are and or writing the amendment to what they think are the problems. The state legislatures are the sovereign entity. They are the sovereign deliberative entity. They decide what the text is. They decide what the delegates are to do at the convention, because the only purpose for an Article 5 convention is to propose amendments, not to change the Constitution, not to create a situation where there's mayhem and an open convention so that the entire Constitution is examined. If they wanted to amend the Constitution in a way that would deny Article 5's limitation, which is proposing amendments, then what would have to happen is the states would have to secede. They would have to create their own convention. They also would have to write their own document and form their own government, independent of Article 5. Article 5 doesn't allow them to do any of that. And they don't have to secede, because Article 5 gives them all the authority they need to be the final arbiters in all constitutional matters. That's how important Article 5 is. And it can only remain that important if the state legislatures retain their deliberative status, not the delegates. And we have to see the delegates as ambassadors. They're not there to create a new document as the founders were. That was the job of the founders. How do we create a new government? And their question was, we need to survive, but how are we going to do that? Well, that's not the question that Article 5 delegates have. Article 5
Charles,
delegates are simply the what, ma'am?
I may live in Texas, but I'm a show-me girl. I'm from Missouri. And when I hear someone saying that they're going to go in and they're going to do this, that, and the other, my question is, can I see the amendment, please? What are you talking about? And with that, I'm going to go ahead, and we need to take a short station break, and we'll be right back with some more great information. Stay tuned, everyone.
This is CPR Media Network, coming to you live from the USA.
My name is Christopher Perkins, Captain, United States Marine Corps. I spent 9 years in the Marines and led a team in Al Ramadi, Iraq that risked its lives daily. Today, I'm a managing director at Citi, where I oversee a global team that provides safeguards for the $700 trillion derivatives industry.
Veterans, many of them have the right skills to be great bankers. And when they come in, they know how to make decisions, they know how to take risks, they know how to multitask. All of those things make them really great colleagues.
Just like we would go out onto the streets of Iraq, we would do an analysis of what risk we're taking and thinking about ways to mitigate it. It's no different here.
That makes them extremely valuable, and that's why we want them here helping our clients.
This industry requires our clients' trust. It requires a high degree of integrity. And so just like the Marine Corps, your reputation is what it is, and your word is very important.
The most amazing thing about the Ford Fusion isn't the way it looks. The most amazing thing is the the way it sees. With blind spot technology, a lane keeping system, and a standard rear view camera, the Fusion is ready for whatever comes your way. Go prepared. Go further.
However dark the night, however dim our hopes, the light is always there within you. His family gave him hope.
You fight harder than those other guys, and you win.
His spirit gave him strength.
We're gonna die out here. We're not dying!
And in his darkest hour,
Who is the Olympic athlete?
his faith would not be broken.
Hello, Mother and Father. This will be the first time in 2 years that you'll have heard my voice. I wish you all a Merry Christmas. Your loving son, Louis.
On Christmas Day, experience the unbelievable true story of one man's journey home.
You can take it. You can make it. Just gotta believe you can.
If I can take it, I can make it.
Unbroken, rated PG-13, Christmas Day. The moment you connect, you're no longer in control.
What does this guy want?
No claim, no statement.
We're facing a nuclear meltdown. This is only the beginning.
Black Hat, rated R. Read something recently worth thinking about. It's the soldier, not the campus organizer, who's given us freedom to demonstrate. It's the soldier, not the reporter, who's given us freedom of the press. It's the soldier, not the poet, who's given us freedom of speech. It's the soldier who serves under the flag, who defends the protesters' right to burn the flag. Isn't it time now to demonstrate that we support our troops? Were it not for the brave, there'd be no land of the free.
Fred Thompson's message was brought to you by citizensunited.org.
Welcome back, everyone, to the State Legislators Roundtable with Charles Kacprowicz. We're discussing the Countermand Amendment and snake oil. If anyone out there has any questions, we would love to have you give us a call. We would be happy to answer any questions that you might have. The number to call is 956-217-0031. We'd love to have you give us a call.
Yeah, this is Mike Coons up here in Alaska. One of the things that Charles has been talking about this delegate resolution about Convention of States and Balanced Budget Amendment Task Force is that they believe that they're going to have historical precedents and legalese. Historical precedents based on the fact that there's supposedly been conventions, state conventions. And you actually look at it that those state conventions were prior to 1787, prior to the Constitution being drafted, prior to Article 5 even being put down in writing, and prior to ratification of the Constitution. Since December of 2013, there has been a awakening of Article 5 throughout a lot of the states. And one of the groups that have come out of that is our own state legislators, and they call themselves now the Assembly of State Legislators. They originally met in December 2013 in Mount Vernon. There was 33 states that showed up, and they were very concerned about a runaway convention. They were very concerned about the John Birch Society and the Eagle Forum concerns of a runaway convention. So they wanted to do something by coming together and coming up with a methodology of having a safe and efficient convention. They did that in December. Then they did a hit. Then they went to Indianapolis in June of 2014. I saw a lot of that deliberation. The very first thing that they did was that they talked
Mike,
about, they wanted it. Yes, go ahead.
I need to break in here because I remember I jumped through some hoops to make sure that Charles's information was in that door at the Mount Vernon Assembly. Remember that? I mean, we really jumped through the hoops. They had all of this information in that room, and no one ever bothered to look at it. That's all I got to say about that for now.
Because COS was also, and that was a lot of it because COS was interfering, although we were told that no other organization had any input.
Yes, and that goes on a lot.
The June meeting.
They need to stop ignoring the real remedy. Stop buying the snake oil.
Right. Exactly. Anyway, in June of 2014, they came up with one state, one vote, and they did come up with majority vote. But that's as far as it really went. Then in December of 2014, they had another meeting. What they did was they ratified and finalized their it's not a mission statement, but it's something similar to that. But they never really came down. They have never come up with a delegate resolution to this date. Now they're going to be meeting again come June. Then they were in Washington D.C. in December of 2014. That's when they came to their conclusions. Again, only 33 some odd states. So now they're going to be meeting again this coming June, unknown location. What is really sad about it, and we have been working with a lot of the state legislators across the nation through this show and through other avenues, that what they are trying to do, we already have written. Is called the delegate resolution, which defines Article 4, Section 4, which defines the delegates, which defines how the committee, the credentials committees at each of the state levels. It defines how the committee will be run with the president and committees, etc.
Now,
so
Charles Kacprowicz is no newcomer to the Article 5 strategy. This has been his specialty for 40 years. Okay? He's already figured this out. It breaks my heart. So much time has passed. Every day that passes, we lose more and more of our freedom and our liberty. And so do our state legislators. They have got to hang on to what is theirs. Do not give it away to a delegate. Go ahead, I'm sorry.
Right, and before, that's okay. And I want to get ready to pass this on to Charles. But the good news, folks, is the state of Alaska is introducing the Countermand Amendment and the delegate resolution. They're doing that this tomorrow. North Dakota has already done it. Louisiana is already doing it. North Carolina is already doing it. Utah is already doing it. All of them.
New Mexico, don't forget New Mexico.
New Mexico is getting ready, is filing. And all of them have sent delegates to this ASL meeting, but all of them are submitting the delegate resolution at their legislative level. And now I'm going to turn this back over to Charles.
Thank you, Mike. That was excellent. And thank you, Kelly, for your added comments. Sandy, did you want to say something here before I go on?
Yeah.
Sandy is our executive coordinator.
I know. I've watched this circus go on, and every one of these groups go in and muddy the waters. Nobody has finished with something that would define how a convention would work. It's like they're all going in blind. Quick sign up, pass our call on Congress, and we'll worry about the rest of the stuff later. And the state legislators are kind of having the wool pulled over their eyes, because when it comes down to it, if they all wind up supporting COS, they're going to be in deep trouble down the road. It just makes sense.
Yeah.
You want to go say something, Mike?
Yeah, and along with that, and the audience needs to know this, there's several states that are doing a shotgun, or as Kelly calls it, a scattergun approach. They're wanting to put all these together the CFA, the BBA, the COS. Some of them are actually putting in countermand amendments. Some of them are just completely forgetting about us and putting this off to the side, which is real sad. But they're trying to do this scattergun and see which one sticks, and that is not the way a deliberative. And that is sad, because you would think that those state legislators, and we've known a lot of them that are statesmen, that are citizens legislators. You would think that they would see through that, but it's worse. Sadly, they haven't.
It's a lot worse than sad. Ignoring the work that Charles Kacprowicz has done over the last 40 years is putting our country at peril every day that goes by. Stop ignoring Charles' work. He has already figured this out, but no one wants to listen. We don't have the money. We don't have the celebrity. We don't have the shiny toys to get everyone's attention. We don't get to go on the radio or on the television. Nobody wants to listen to what Charles has to say. And I tell you what, ignoring the Countermand Amendment is at America's peril. We are not going to last very much longer. And we need to stop talking about the problems and let's start talking about the solutions. Because they think they're going to walk in the door and they're going to sit down, and first of all they got to figure out how they're going to do the convention. Well, we'll be lucky if they can fit all the egos in the room to start with. And then they're going to be arguing for however long it's going to take. And then they're going to sit down and write a remedy to what's wrong with this country. And in the meantime, the state legislators are just going to sit there and wait and hope and pray that something good comes out of it. No. That is the job of the state legislatures. They need to know what those delegates are up to. That work needs to be pre-approved ahead of time, everything ready, sitting at the table before the delegate ever walks into the chamber to begin his work.
Yes, and of course that's what the Article 5 states. The state legislatures have this authority, and that's really the point. And when we consider Article 5 came after the Annapolis Convention failed, and it came during the Constitutional Convention, before the government was formed. The point is that it's a new beginning for the states. It's a new starting point for the states to know how to keep government under control and still retain their independent character and excellence. Now, I have a couple of quick questions. I have some very important business, folks, I want you to listen to, dealing with a special promotion that we're going to invite all of you to participate in. You're going to like this. Now, first of all, as far as the Assembly of State Legislatures, I did receive from Senator Long, who's one of their leaders, a very cordial and respectful email and expressing gratitude for the work that we're doing. I just got that about a month ago. So they're apparently listening to our stuff. And the fact is that they got one vote per state as a concept. That sounds like they've made progress. They did not. Now, let me tell you why. Let's assume that California, with 55 delegates, is asked to agree on having one vote per state. But the other states, let's assume that 51% of the other states say one vote per state, but New York says no, California says no, Michigan says no, Illinois says no, Hawaii says no, and so forth and so on. Now, you're still going to the convention with unbound delegates only from those states that agree, and they're only going to send one delegate. But the others are going to say, what do you mean? I'm not submitting to one vote per state. I want to have it per delegate, by population. You see the flaw in their thinking? They'll not get 50 states to agree, and they need 50 states in order to assure that the delegates will be voting one state delegation, one vote. On the other hand, this delegate resolution that we have, and only 26 states will make it a safe convention. Folks, get the book, countermands.us. Order it online. It's now available. And the fact is, you'll learn why this will work with the actual documents included. Now, as far as the ASL is concerned, there is a problem that I think is going to come down the road with
Charles,
ASL.
we have a caller.
The what?
We have a caller.
All right.
I'm going to bring them.
Caller? Who is this?
Hello.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you for calling the State Legislators Roundtable.
Go right ahead. Make your comment, ma'am.
Oh, maybe she called and thought that was how to listen to the station.
All
but
right.
you know, Charles,
Well,
the thing
is
everything is getting so complicated when it's actually frighteningly simple. It's very simple
but
concept.
There are a couple of things that we need to let the audience know about. Certainly the legislators, and that is that even the ASL has some portending problems ahead when it comes to the potential violation of Article 1, Section 10. Even if they succeed in not violating it, I am almost certain somebody's going to sue them. And the states will be subject to a lawsuit because of their claim that they have violated by coming up with a compact between the states without Congress's approval. And therefore they violated Article 1. I suspect that's a flaw. Now, folks, I want us to talk for a few moments about a whole new approach that those in the audience can have part in for the purpose of advancing the Countermand Amendment and also for the purpose of restoring our constitutional republic. The program we're calling, the program that we are beginning is called the Defenders of Our Constitutional Republic. Now, there are two parts to it. Now, here's where you can have a very significant influence on the direction of this nation. Right now, I am in Cheyenne, Wyoming. We need about $18,000 to complete this trip over 3 months. That's nothing. There are people in the audience that $18,000 to them is pocket change. But, you know, unless we help them to really understand the urgency of the hour and that we are making constitutional history with the Countermand Amendment through these state legislatures, they're likely not to do very much. On the other hand, here's the program that we are proposing. And those in the audience, please hear me out. For a donation to the Countermand Amendment, to citizen initiatives and the Countermand Amendment, when a donation is for $1,000 or more, you will automatically become a Diamond Patriot member, and you will receive a very official plaque that you will hang on the wall. If you have a $500 donation, you will receive a platinum plaque, Patriot plaque, that you will be able to hang on your wall. $250, it's the gold plaque, Patriot plaque, and $100 is the silver Patriot plaque. Now, that will be a declaration to everyone who sees the plaque and or knows something about what you're doing, that you had part in a constitutional initiative that was designed to preserve our nation and our Constitution at a time when it was being shredded by the left and by the Marxists and by the progressives and by the communists and by all of the groups that don't think that there's anything valuable left in our Constitution. And you need to step up to the plate and make a donation. For every donation, we will also send a copy. For every $25 that you make, we will send a copy of my new book, Countermand Amendment, The Missing Piece in the Article 5 Puzzle, to a state legislator. We want 7,500 state legislators to get this free copy, including the documents that are in the book. Very, very, very important.
And Charles, and why would they want to participate with citizen initiatives, and why would they want the Countermand Amendment? Can I tell them?
Yes, go right ahead.
We can restore our constitutional republic and our state rights. We can take back our toys, kids, okay, from the bullies. We can, with 34 states filing the same title, the Countermand Amendment, those states can walk right on around the Congress, the courts, and the executive branch of the federal government. We don't need their permission. The states created them, not the other way around. That Countermand amendment is fewer than 400 words, and it can do more than all 10 of any other amendment. That Countermand amendment, once it's ratified, 30 states can countermand and rescind, not nullify, rescind executive orders, court decisions, budgets, debts, unfunded liabilities that the states don't want. Obamacare, I hear it got turned down today, but I don't know. Social issues, laws against our gun rights, Second Amendment. How about the EPA, BLM, IRS, DOJ? The EPA regulations are strangling our states' industries to death. They're taking our jobs. The federal land grabs that are taking over our state resources. People, if we can get this Countermand amendment through and ratified, we can begin these countermands by next year or the middle of next year. But we have got to get moving. We have got to get moving.
Thank you,
and we can do this, and we can do this peacefully.
Did someone else want to say something? John, did you want to interject something? I thought I heard someone else. Okay. Timing. We believe there's a good chance that this amendment not only will have 34 applications in 2016, but also that the convention will be convened in early 2016, and that the convention with the delegate resolution and the pre-approved text by the legislatures for the Countermand amendment, that could take as little as 7 days. Then it would go back to the states for ratification. Ratification process might take a couple of months, but because of the urgency of the hour, now the states will be in a position to begin countermanding laws and rulings and regulations in 2016. There is no other Article 5 group that can even begin to approach that kind of a timeline. Now, I want to explain, because what I just told you about defenders of our constitutional republic, I want to go back into that in a moment. But before I do, I want you to understand that the Countermand Amendment does not put the federal government out of business. I had a liberal legislator in North Dakota who challenged me on that point. Well, what do you mean the federal government has a legitimate role? They do have a legitimate role, but it can be altered by the state legislatures when they overstep their bounds, when they don't allow civil liberties to be properly protected, and or where they don't protect the states' rights under this Republican form of government that we've been guaranteed. So here's how it works. Let's assume that it has to do something, that there's a countermand initiative, and it has to do something with federal encroachment on states' land. In Nevada, as we all know, 82% of the land in Nevada is controlled by the federal government. How did that happen? It happened through regulatory agencies. Congress authorized the EPA and the BLM, and then they have been authorized to write rules as to what it means to protect wildlife or to protect the environment. And so they declare some animal to be in jeopardy of extinction, and all of a sudden that animal is protected forever, and the land in that area is protected. And the state can't use it. And it goes on like this. Now, here's how it would work. Let's assume, and by the way, the states are perfectly capable of conducting the necessary or to provide the necessary protections for animals. You know, the states can be conservationists in a very effective way. But you see, if you're an environmentalist, you're an ideologue. Environmentalism to the left means some kind of a religion. That tree-hugging aspect of how you go about defending your interest. I have to say this. I approached a gentleman, a legislator, and I won't tell you where, just recently, but when I talked to him about the Countermand Amendment, and he began to understand the impact, he said to me, I can't do it. I can't support it. And he was a Democrat, by the way. And I said, why not? He said, because I need federal government money. Because it goes to, and then he named the entity that it goes to. And he said, I cannot surrender the authority that we have in the federal government to have that money funneled to us. I want you to think about that. What this man is saying is that the politician can buy votes from blocks of groups of people with our tax money. That's what they do. They buy votes with our money. And then they claim that it's some kind of a they claim that it's some kind of a need that is being met, that if you don't do it, they're going to starve to death.
Well, my favorite is in Missouri, where they're trying to take over state resources in order to protect an invasive species of clam in the river.
There you go. You know, and the snail darter and so forth in California. But here's where I was going earlier, dealing with I forgot where I was going now. I had something I was connecting with, and
it was the platinum. Why we need to support the Countermand Amendment, and the cool idea you came up with the constitutional defenders.
Yes. And I'm going to go back to that. But there was another issue, and I lost it, and I'm going to try to remember it. It has to do with the way. Oh, I know what it is. How the Countermand Amendment works. So let's assume that the 30 states countermand a particular law, maybe the one that is taking a good part of Nevada's land. 30 states say that's not something we want the federal government to do through this agency. And these people are not even elected. They're just bureaucrats. And so now it's rescinded. Now that agency, if they issued this edict, guess what? They have to do one of two things. They have to rewrite it in a way that is amenable to the states, or they abandon it. They don't put the agency out of business. Now, they could with this amendment, but in the case that I just gave you, the point is that the federal government still functions. Even the supremacy clause would remain intact with the Constitution, so that the Supreme Court would rule in a way where the states would be obliged to honor it unless they overreach and 30 states countermand that particular ruling. Now all of a sudden the Supreme Court has to redo it and or abandon it. You see, what would happen with this countermand is puts the federal government in check. It says, look, you do your legitimate role, but don't make it so it's burdensome to the point where our people have another $1 trillion of debt to pay. And by not doing it properly, that is imposing your will on our state, we can countermand it. That will make the federal government more responsible. And better government will result. Better state governments will result. Because you have a balance now. And the balance is, hey, we can check it, but we don't want to hurt you. See, the federal government has a function. This was one of the big battles in the Constitutional Convention. How do you allow a national government to function in states that are all autonomous nation states? And
that's right. We don't want to put them out of business. We just want them to treat us fairly. And what's happening?
That's correct.
What's happening is not fair. And Charles, we do need to take a short station break.
Okay. On the other end, I'll pick up this thing of defenders of our constitutional republic. Folks, stay with us. This is an important thing I'm going to present, and it will be in the final half-hour segment.
Thank you, everyone. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Well, looky here, a new listener. Hey, this ain't your little sister's radio station.
When I'm training, I always listen to music. For the gym, it's hip-hop. For cross-country, classical. And for jumps, I need something special. So I use my Citi Thank You Visa card for music downloads and earn 2 times the points. Plus, a little extra inspiration.
Excuse me, while I kiss this guy.
The Citi Thank You Preferred Visa Card. Earn 2 times the points on entertainment and dining out with no annual fee. Citi, with you every step of the way.
It's not about how many miles you can get out of the C-Max Hybrid. It's about how much life you can fit into it. The Ford C-Max Hybrid, with an EPA estimated range of 540 miles on a tank of gas, and all the room you need to enjoy the trip. Go stretch out. Go further.
However dark the night, however dim our hopes, the light is always there within you.
His family gave him hope.
You fight harder than those other guys, and you win.
His spirit gave him strength.
We're gonna die out here. We're not dying!
And in his darkest hour,
Who is the Olympic athlete?
his faith would not be broken.
Hello, Mother and Father. This will be the first time in 2 years that you'll have heard my voice. I wish you all a Merry Christmas. Your loving son, Louis.
On Christmas Day, experience the unbelievable true story of one man's journey home.
You can take it. You can make it. Just gotta believe you can.
If I can take it, I can make it.
Unbroken, rated PG-13, Christmas Day. The moment you connect, you're no longer in control.
What does this guy want?
No claim, no statement.
We're facing a nuclear meltdown. This is only the beginning.
Black Hat, rated R.
Read something recently worth thinking about. It's the soldier, not the campus organizer, who's given us freedom to demonstrate. It's the soldier, not the reporter, who's given us freedom of the press. It's the soldier, not the poet, who's given us freedom of speech. It's the soldier who serves under the flag, who defends the protesters' right to burn the flag. Isn't it time now to demonstrate that we support our troops? Were it not for the brave, there'd be no land of the free.
Fred Thompson's message was brought to you by citizensunited.org.
Back, folks. Again, this is the State Legislators Roundtable. Charles Kacprowicz, your host, and with our team of Roundtable members, Sandy Toth, Kelly Gordon, and Mike Coons. And we give you our best when we're on this program. We try very hard to explain things in a way that will put the pieces together properly. But now I want to talk about how you can have an active role, ongoing role, in the direction of our nation with the Countermand Amendment through state legislatures. Now remember, legislators don't have any way right now to counter federal encroachment. Oh, they have the Supreme Court, but it takes years, and then they almost always lose, no matter what the issue. On the other hand, as Representative Brody in North Carolina said to us one time, that if we had the Countermand in place, then my constituents could come to me as a state representative and tell me what's on their mind and what issues I should be considering. And if it deals with federal encroachment on their land or their rights, I can now address that with the Countermand. I will have a tool that will allow me to represent my constituents in an effective way. That's how powerful this is. Now, folks, you can have a very important role in the future of our nation. And here's how it will happen. Yes, become a defender of our constitutional republic. You will become a member. If you make a donation, you'll become a diamond member, and you will receive a plaque that will identify you as a diamond member for your wall. If you have $1,000 or more, you are a diamond member. If you have $500 that you're donating, you're a platinum member. If you have $250, you're a gold member. And if you have $100, you're a silver member. Now go to countermands.us. The donate button at the top right is how you would do that. Click it and send us that help, because we have to raise $18,000 very quickly as we traveled from state to state. We need your support. But here's the next thing that you need to understand. For everyone who will be donating, even if it's $100, you will automatically become a member of the National Steering Committee. You will have the ability with state legislators and other citizens who will be also contributors. You will have the ability to decide what laws and rulings need to be addressed. You will be able to have a say in which ones will be selected and prioritized. And then you will also have the ability to decide which ones need to be countermanded. Now that's what's going to happen when you support us. This is a very important program that we have just started. We would love to have you come on board. This is important. It's that important, folks, that we understand we are making constitutional history, and we must preserve Article 5 as proposing amendments to sovereign, deliberative state legislators. We must not allow them to lose that status to delegates or Congress or anyone else. Now, if, for an example, you become even a small donor of $100 for a silver member, you will have the ability to have an input on issues that have to be discussed in that committee meeting. There'll be regular scheduled meetings that you will participate in. In addition, there will be a steering committee. And depending on how the memberships go, you could be a member of the steering committee. And that committee will be responsible for researching issues. Now, this is ongoing. One more thing. After the amendment is ratified, you will, and your membership is for 1 year on that steering committee, and then you have to renew it. But the fact is, after the amendment, the Countermand amendment is ratified, now we begin our Countermand initiatives. That means you now have an input that we then, through citizen initiatives, will have an influence on the states in helping them to see the necessity for countermanding such and such and such and such. And that input will be something you don't have now. And you can't have now, because there's no way for you to have it now. But with the Countermand amendment in place, you will have this input. And you will be able to mold the direction of your state and this nation in a way that will allow you to feel like you are really a patriot. You are really a mover, and you are making history because you are not only preserving this constitutional republic, but you are helping to use it, that is the amendment, in such a way where it is preserving legislature sovereignty and deliberative status for generations to come. This is extremely important, and I invite you to participate. Join us, countermands.us, become a defender of our constitutional republic, make a donation, and then on top of that, with any donation of $100 or more, you will automatically become a member of the National Strategy Committee and would qualify to become part of the steering committee on that national board. So this is very important. Now, anyone else want to add anything to this conversation?
Well, Charles, I truly believe that we've got a really good shot at a peaceful resolution to the federal overreach that's going on right now. And our legislators need the power of the countermand. And they need it quickly so that we can begin these countermands.
Very much so. Very, very much so. Sandy, did you want to add anything to this at this point?
The other thing I would add is that if everybody that's listening could call some of their state legislators and try to talk to them, give them messages to support the countermand, to help get the legislators' interest so they pay attention and go ahead and sponsor that would be really wonderful too, because that's another way you can participate.
Another great way is if everyone listening to the show right now would like to at least send $1 to the website, that in itself would help Charles get this across the country to the state legislatures so that they can understand that they must maintain their legislative authority. They cannot just hand it over to a delegate. They've got to have it pre-approved before the convention starts. I don't know how they think 500 people are going to walk into a room and come out with a remedy in a short amount of time. Charles has figured it out, that delegate resolution. They can walk in there, sit down, get their work done, and that convention could be over in a week, 10 days, instead of 10 years of arguing. And you know what? That makes me think of something else. United we stand, divided we fall. There are so many Article 5 groups right now that are arguing amongst themselves. And we are tearing this country apart because we are not united. Because egos and people who think they know so much, like I said, where you're unable to learn, unlearn, and relearn. It's like you can't take your head's so full of information, you can't take in anything new. You can't accept the fact that someone else may have a better idea, even if it's at the risk of losing your country. United we stand, divided we fall.
Thank you, Kelly. Now, folks, as I travel, I will be conducting Countermand Amendment seminars. I think my first one is coming up in Denver on the 13th. I don't have an address yet, but it will be posted on the website. And it will be, let me rephrase that. It'll allow those in that city to know when I will be there, what time. It will be an open forum. There'll be some discussion of what it is that we're trying to do. The audience will be able to respond with questions and comments, and then afterwards there will be a book signing. And the book signing, it'll be we will sign the book and with my personal autograph, provide a way for you to remember that you're part of history. And by doing that, we'll be able to help pay our way as we move across the country. Now, there's another program, another initiative that I have to advance toward the end of the year for another 3 months. After we finish with this in these 36 states, we then have to go back in September, October, and November. And we have to I'll be on the road again for 3 months. And there we will need help also. Now, if we sell enough books, we'll have what we need. But if not, we'll need donations. And folks, I'm telling you, it's time to step up and say, hey, we're going to help this group. We've got to move this thing forward because our Constitution hangs in the balance. Now, John, did you have something you wanted to add? I guess we lost him. Mike, did you want to add something before we close our program out?
We still have 15 minutes, Charles.
Okay, Mike?
Yes, I would. Yes, we need financial help, and Kelly was absolutely right. Even just $1 or those people who are listening right now would be a sizable hunk of money. But as important is that call your state legislators, go to your district offices. We call them legislative information offices here in Alaska. The same difference. If you live in the Capitol or you're close to the Capitol, go to the Capitol if they're in session. Make an appointment. Go in and talk to them. Sit down and lay this out to them. Tell them that you want them to sponsor this. Tell them that you want to co-sponsor it in those states that are sponsoring it. Get them to understand the gravity of this. Let them know what you're hearing here tonight about the snake oil that is being sold down the river with COS. Let them know that a scattergun approach is not, repeat, not what our founding fathers did. If our founding fathers had done a shotgun approach like this to develop to come up with the Constitution, we would still be English. We would still be colonists under the king, or actually now the queen. So this is something that we have to. It's getting out there. It's talking to these people. It's letting them know that you are engaged and you want them engaged. So it's a real simple thing. And then the other thing that you need to do is in those states that this is going through, like Alaska, like North Dakota, like New Mexico, like North Carolina, like Louisiana. I can't think. There's others, but they're just not coming to mind right now. South Dakota. Find out when those committee hearings are being held. Call in if you can call into those committee hearings to testify. Some states don't allow you to. You have to be there physically. Get there physically. Be there. Get in their face. Give them a 3-minute presentation of why this is important and needs to be passed. This is when everybody talks about grassroots effort. Grassroots effort isn't just like what the Tea Party does a lot of times, going out in rallies and making the news. A lot of this, what you don't see the Tea Party, the effective Tea Party's doing, is what you don't see them doing is going into the halls of their legislators, going to the halls of Congress, going up to those legislators or going up to those Congress critters or those senators and saying, this is the way it is, and by God, you're going to start listening to us. That's how you get this thing turned around. Yes, we need money. Yes, we need an army that is going to help it so that Charles can get, I don't know what $2 a gallon gas into that 26-foot motorhome, that keep the food in his belly so he has the energy to do what he needs to do. That is exceedingly important at this point in time. But on top of that, we need to have you engaged with your state legislatures. Let them know what you want and let them know what you don't want and why. And be very firm about it, but be courteous, and that will make this thing turn around on a dime. And back at you, Charles.
Thank you. Folks, I have a personal matter that I'd like to share. I hope, Kelly, can I share it, or do you want me to not share it?
I'm not sure I can't read your mind, sir.
Okay, well, you know about, all right, what Kelly has done. She had to make some changes in her home, and her furniture, her living room furniture, was being sold. You know what she did? She took that furniture and the money that she got from it and sent it to citizen initiatives. You understand what this means? I mean, there's a sacrifice that's being made, even with furniture, in order to get this initiative going forward and to fund it. And I want you to understand, folks, some of you have
Charles?
far more. Yes.
And not to be overshadowed by the pretty girl on the other end of the line, but I sold one of my most valued want firearms that I bought a long time ago and I've enjoyed for a lot of years, and that money is getting me down to Juneau to push this forward at our state capitol, which is going to run me about $600-700 to fly down there to do it. And I sold one of my favorite firearms to do the cause. I'm sure other people can come up with $10.
Let me tell you something right now. My vehicle is up next because I want this Countermand so bad for my kids, for my grandkids, for my American exceptionalism that is being drained. Now, when it came down and our founding fathers were losing their freedom and their liberties, they gave everything they had. Guess what, people? It's our turn now. Do you want to remain a free nation, or do you want to be slaves?
Thank you, Kelly. I'm very proud of the both of you. But folks, understand, it's not a matter of bragging. We're not talking about puffing each other up. We have a serious battle on our hands, and we're going to lose this. if we don't have the resources in order to see it through to completion. But when we do succeed, I want you who have been supporting us, and those of you who are directors, and by the way, this steering committee will have on it the directors and the coordinators from the states, and supporters. So the point is, this steering committee is going to be a very powerful committee for the purpose of deciding what needs to be addressed and what needs to be countermanded, but you're going to be part of history. You're going to have an influence like you've never dreamed. It's never happened before. And yet at the same time, the Constitution will never be changed by it. Your rights in the First Amendment will be just like they are right now. Your rights in the Fourth Amendment, that is from protection from government seizure and intrusion into your life, that will be the same. Nothing will change. What will change, though, is that when the federal government gets too big, remember the founders, that's how they saw things, too big or too little. When they get too big, you have a protector now in the state legislatures. And all they have to do is say, no, we're going to countermand it. 30 countermands means that particular encroachment on your personal liberties is stopped.
And we have plenty of honorable...
Yes.
We have plenty of honorable state legislators and oath keepers who want to the same thing that we do, to protect and defend that Constitution.
That's correct.
I do not want my granddaughter, my grandsons, I do not want them to be enslaved to this horrible debt that is being thrust upon our states.
Absolutely. Just the other day, Kelly, I may have mentioned this earlier, but a very influential legislator said to me after we explained to him what it is that we were doing, and he said, Charles, he said, that's what I've been looking for. He said, you're speaking now to somebody that wants what you're explaining, and I'll help you with it. You see, that's how instantly legislators and others can respond in a positive way. Once they understand what this is going to do for this nation and for their state. Now, one other thing before we start closing, that is the Article 5 single issue amendment concept with a pre-approved text, whether it be the Countermand amendment or if the states decide later they want a balanced budget amendment or some other amendment, sovereignty amendment, which is something that we have. And we also have the balanced budget amendment. But the point that I'm making is that you can have more than one convention at a time. You see, this idea that it is a constitutional convention and that the delegates have to decide things means you can only have one constitutional convention and it's over with. The implication is you can never use Article 5 again. But when you have a single issue, pre-approved text to an amendment like the Countermand amendment, then you have no limitation as to how many different issues can be addressed with Article 5 safely, quickly, and successfully. And there's no mayhem. You know, Article 5 doesn't allow these delegates to create a new constitution, but there could be mayhem. The delegate resolution pre-approved text prevents mayhem. So, folks, we've got answers here that really need to be applied in the United States of America. And I trust you'll step up now. Go to countermand.us. Let us know how you can help us. Make a donation. You'll automatically become a member on the steering committee. And on top of that, you will be in a position to start identifying those laws and rulings that you want the Countermand Amendment to address. You'll be in a very, very important, influential position, and it won't be because you're a billionaire. It'll be because you're a citizen who wants to make a difference, and with whatever amount that you have, it will become part of this constitutional initiative effort.
If everyone listens, that's right, countermands.us. If everyone who is listening to this show right now will click that button and send $1, we can finish this tour and get Charles safely home. Get our legislators educated, and they're getting excited. They are loving the countermand. They are loving that there is that their constituents can walk in with a problem of a federal nature, and instead of them having to say, "Oh, I'm sorry, that's federal, I can't do anything about it," now they can say, "Well, I wonder if any other states are having a problem with that. You know what? Well, maybe we'll just check into a countermand, see what we can do for you."
And Kelli, and Charles, if I may, real quick,
we've got 4 minutes, guys.
Segue to that, is we just had these two gentlemen from Delaware, a very, very blue state. They were looking to see how the countermand would impact those blue state issues. And we did point out to them that there's a lot of those issues that are across this nation, conservative, liberal, we all have the same concerns. Maybe not exactly the same concerns, but enough that there'd be enough countermanding and repealing to make a huge difference. And Charles, I turn it back over to you to finish this up.
The countermand can also address the Common Core issue as well. Also, people, just wanted to say that too. Charles,
okay.
3 minutes.
Yep. It's amazing. Yeah.
We have 3 minutes left. So anyway, again, I strongly urge you, please go to the website, click the button, send $1, help Charles get this across the country, and help our legislatures learn how they can protect their sovereignty. Don't let them give it to a delegate. The delegate is the ambassador for the legislature. We didn't elect the delegate, we elected the legislator.
Okay, I was just talking into a muted phone. So that's why, and I'm wondering why you're not responding, and here it was me. Folks, I guess I'm just a little tired tonight. However, this is a nonpartisan initiative, folks.
That's right.
Mike is right. It can be used by the Democrats, and it can be used by the Republicans, by the independents, but you see, the focus is states' rights. Now,
and we're looking for Americans.
The what?
We're looking for Americans.
Yes, and so what we have is a way to actually preserve our constitutional republic. If anybody thinks that's not worth keeping, I'm going to say it straight out, you're nuts.
Charles?
There's something wrong with your head.
You've got 1 minute to get...
We have a constitution that protects us, and the republic is what makes our individualities possible.
And let's pray to God that we... Let's pray to God that we can hang on to that.
We have to close, and I have the custom of closing with a prayer. And I'm going to do that right now. Join me, please. And I ask you to just recognize that without the Lord's leading, we will not succeed. Lord, we come in the name of Jesus, and we thank you that we have this privilege. Lord, we are embarked on a terrible battle. We are embarked on the battle for the minds and souls and lives of men. And in fact, this Countermand Amendment can remedy so many problems that no one else can offer, no other Article 5 group. But Lord, we need your wisdom, we need your understanding, we need finances, we need resources, we need people, and we need direction. And so we are imploring you to direct our steps so we will eventually bring this to a successful conclusion, to a ratification, and where we will see this nation one more time moving back to where we are a God-fearing people again. And we ask it in Jesus' name.